Hey guys, so this week's product review is on the Landyachtz Cheesegrater. I've had this board for a while and I'm stoked to finally bring you a review. So if you're interested in how this board rides, what trucks to set it up, how the concave feels, all that, stay tuned and watch the rest of the video. Yeah. But first, let's talk about the specifications of this board. It's 36.25 inches long, 9.5 inches wide. It has wheelbase options between 22.5 inches all the way up to 29 inches. It's made with 9 plies of Canadian maple, but it sounds like it has a layer of fiberglass in there, so I'm not really sure. It comes with fine grip tape. As you can see, I've replaced mine. And in terms of concave features, it has W, it has microdrop, it has rocker, it has deep wheel wells, and as well as flush mounting to make sure that your trucks are completely flat, because the rocker does angle them a bit, and without the flush mounting your trucks would sit at an angle. Finally, it does come at the price of about $139. So yeah, that's the Landyachtz Cheesegrater. Disclaimer though, I am a Landyachtz team rider. I did get this board for free, but I am going to be critical and unbiased and honest where I need to be in this review. So yeah. But I will say, if you are a longboard manufacturer and you do want to pay me to review your products and have a very biased opinion, I am open to that. My line is open to negotiation, so please hit me up. I also went ahead and had a small interview with Alex Hannigan. Alex Hannigan is the pro rider who designed the cheese grater, and you can find out what I asked him and how he responded in the article linked in the description. So check that out. I asked him about how he has his cheese grater set up, the story behind making the cheese grater and how it came to be, and different sort of interesting things. So if you want to learn more about the board, more about how best to ride it and how the designer rides it, then check out the article. So let's kick it off with a bit of a summary. Of concave features, the Cheesegrater has some of the best that I've used. I really like the concave on this board. The concave features are there but remain unintrusive and don't force your feet into any awkward positions. But when you do choose to use them, they are there and they are useful. When it comes to mounting options, you have a ton on the Cheesegrater, and this is good for a few reasons. It allows you to really adjust how you interact with other concave features on this board. For example, depending on where I put my footstop, I can choose whether I interact with the microdrop or not. The one thing I really didn't like about this board was the shape, but that started to grow on me as well. The other thing that I didn't like was the grip tape. You get fine grip tape with this board, but if you want it to be a true downhill and freeride machine, you're going to have to replace it with coarse grip tape. Otherwise, the fine grip tape is okay if you're going to be mainly riding really slidey freeride wheels. Altogether, the Cheesegrater is a really excellent board. I've really enjoyed using it and I look forward to using it again and again. I think this board is really underrated and overlooked by the community, and I think it deserves more love. So let's talk about the concave on the Cheesegrater. So you have a bit of micro drop, you have some W, you have I think wheel flares, and you have pretty mellow rails. As I did say, the concave features are mellow, but they are very usable. And what adds to this also is how you can mount the board and the various amount of mounting options. For example, depending on where you mount your front truck and your footstop, you can choose whether you interact with the front micro drop or not. For example, I had my footstop mounted about here, and what this did, it allowed me to place my toes on the micro drop, and this gave me a lot of leverage for toe side maneuvers like doing toe side slides or just turning toe side. This was really nice. So yeah, this was pretty great. But also, if I wanted to totally not use the micro drop at all, I could also mount my footstop on the innermost mounting option, and yeah, I wouldn't use the micro drop at all. And in this way, you have a lot of freedom and a lot of creativity with what you could do on the Cheesegrater. However, just because you have a lot of options and a lot of freedom doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good thing. I can see a lot of people getting lost in the experimentation phase with this board, just really sort of experimenting and seeing what they like, whether they like a really long wheelbase, whether they like a really short one, where they want to put their foot, etc. Instead of just being able to jump on the board and get on with the riding. But I think that's really up to the individual and is more of a personal problem. But yeah, too much choice isn't necessarily a good thing, but you do have choice with the Cheesegrater. Another thing I really liked about the concave was the rails. The rails are steep, but they're not that steep. For example, the rails on the Landyachtz small blind are quite steep and I feel uncomfortable placing my heels on them and doing sort of hillside stuff on it. But with these, I felt very comfortable. And yeah, I really like the rails on the Cheesegrater. I also oddly felt very comfortable using and pushing my toes against it for doing like toe side stuff, and also for just sort of pushing against it when tucking. It felt very natural and I felt very secure. Next thing I want to talk about is the W of this board. It's very mellow and non-intrusive, but it still remains useful. By non-intrusive, I mean that you can sort of put your back foot and your front foot really anywhere you like and not really feel the W getting in your way. If you're in a tuck, you could even place your back foot directly over the W and not feel very uncomfortable. For a bit of illustration and contrast, other boards like the Landyachtz small blind and the loaded Tesseract have kind of aggressive W, less so on the small blind, but it really affects where you position your back foot, and you can't really put it on top of the W or put it kind of next to the W, or you start to feel a bit uncomfortable. But yeah, the W on this is very mellow and it's pretty great. And it is usable. In some videos, you can see Alex Hannigan pushing against it when doing slides on freeride wheels. I personally push on the rail for slides on two sides, but yeah, Alex Hannigan does use it. I didn't feel very comfortable pushing against it. I just generally don't feel very comfortable pushing against the W for slides, so I can't really comment on that. But yeah, Alex makes it work. But just because it works for Alex doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody else. So I do think you should pair your W with grippy grip tape, for example, Quick Grip or Locked On Grip or whatever it is that you choose to use, and you shall be safe to push against and use the W. Next, I'm going to talk about the micro drops. Now, I don't know how much of a drop there is, but yeah, the micro drops on this board are very mellow. They're more gradual rather than steep. For example, a board like the Pantheon Gaia has relatively steep and sheer W. This is really gradual and mellow, and you can even kind of stand on it and put like your toes on top of it pretty comfortably. I don't know how useful it is to sort of lock your foot in, because I know like W on the Gaia is kind of nice to sort of push against when you're doing toe sides. This isn't as good. However, your foot does feel locked in enough with the combination of the W, the I think there's a wheel flare. I can't really be sure. Wheel flare, the micro drop, your foot does feel locked in enough for doing like slides and toe side stuff without a foot stop. But yeah, the micro drop is very gradual. You can still feel it in the back, and it is nice to sort of push against when you're doing toe side stuff, and sort of also as a reference point when you're tucking or when you're doing hillside stuff as well. So another thing I want to do is I want to chop this board and use it in a smaller sort of shape. Use it with trucks like the Smoky is another small trucks. I really like the concave, and I think that concave is going to excel really well in a slalom downhill board. But yeah, it's fantastic, great concave. And because it's a brick shape, you have a lot of freedom to the shape you can choose, to the sort of width you want, all that good stuff. So yeah, keep a lookout for the Abuga Cheesegrater chop, maybe if I can find the right tools for it. But yeah, I think it's a great platform for that. I know I did complain about the shape of the board earlier, but that brick shape also means that you get consistent leverage over your trucks no matter where your feet are on the board. For example, other boards that have taper, for example, like the Pantheon Gaia. So the Pantheon Gaia has taper and is wider around the middle than it is where at the nose and where the trucks are mounted. And what this does, it means that depending on where your foot is, you're going to have a different amount of leverage over the trucks. When I was skating the Gaia, this kind of felt uncomfortable to me because where the trucks are mounted is narrower. My toes wouldn't have as much leverage as my heels do because the board will sort of curve out, and this really bothered me a lot. It also was really confusing about picking the trucks for that board with taper. Do I pick trucks according to how wide the board is because it's widest at its waist, or how wide where the mounting part for the truck is, or how wide where my feet go is? Yeah, so having a brick shape really just eliminates all of that issue, and it is a bit ugly, but it does feel great underfoot, and I like the shape because of that. And again, like the Gaia, the drops on this board are quite far apart. This board was also designed by a really tall rider. Alex Hannigan is 6 foot tall, and the drops have ended up being about 25 to 26 inches apart. Now, if you're like me, if you're 5'10", if you have a shorter stance, this isn't very nice. You're not going to be able to use both of the drops simultaneously, and you may only really end up using one. But when I did end up using the board, when I did end up having knee pads on and my stance was lengthened naturally, I did end up using the back drop. It was nice to push against for toe sides. It was nice as a reference point for heel sides. I didn't really push against it when I was tucking, but it was nice to sort of rest my heel on when I came out of the tuck. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. If you are a shorter rider and if you do have a shorter stance, you may not necessarily end up using both of the drops. I will say depending on where you put your foot stop, you can end up using the back drop and a little bit of the front drop as well. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. I am going to touch again on staggering amount of options you have with this deck. So with all the mounting options, you can really position your foot in a place that really works for you. I found a place that works for me, and yeah, that's a big advantage of having all these mounting points, all the freedom to find what works best for you. And also because you have all the mounting options again, you can also run really different setups on this board. You can run a free ride setup on the longer wheelbases, or when you shorten the wheelbases, you can run a more race oriented setup and really sort of experiment with different things. So yeah, with great mounting options comes great Next is the cheese grater stiff. Yes, the cheese grater is stiff. It's made with 9 plies of maple, and I swear it sounds like there's a bit of fiberglass here, but yeah, it is stiff. It's made with 9 plies of maple. Yeah, but because it's made with 9 plies of maple and it's as large as it is, this board is kind of heavy. And when you're pushing around, you don't really feel the heaviness. The only time you really feel it is when you pick the board up or when you're pushing up a hill. But other than that, yeah, it's not that heavy, but it is kind of heavy, but it's not that heavy, but kind. Next, let's take a look at the wheel wells. The wheel wells on this board are really deep. They're about a quarter of an inch deep, and you really need them because this board has rocker and because it has flush mounting. Your trucks actually sit within the board quite deeply. I think this is about an eighth of an inch. I'm not sure how deep the flush mountings go, but yeah, you do get kind of wheel bite with even things like small 70 millimeter freeride wheels, depending on how loose you run your trucks. But wheel bite is a possibility, and you need really deep wheel wells. So what did I use my cheese grater for? And I used it for kind of a mix of everything. The only thing I didn't really use it for is tricks. Alex Hannigan says that if you set this up on the innermost mounting options, you can kind of use the remaining space as a kicktail. I never tried that, but maybe something to experiment when you pick the cheese grater up. But I used it for both downhill and freeride. For downhill, I set mine up with sort of racy wheels. I had 72 millimeter K-rimes on it and some RF ones. I don't have the bare 155 millimeter trucks yet, and I don't really have any other wheels that I felt comfortable running on this. I did try the cheaters, but the cheaters felt just dummy grippy on this, and I didn't feel very comfortable. I bet if I dialed it in, I would have been okay, but I just didn't spend too much time on that. For freeride, I run it with 180 millimeter trucks, and I run it with easy hogs and snakes and all that good stuff, and I was able to do pretty nice stand-up slides as well. So yeah, it's both good for downhill and freeride depending on how you set it up. If you want more information about my setups and specifics, like the bushings I used, check out the article in the description. So what trucks should you run with this board? So you can really run any trucks that you want, but I recommend trucks around the 40-45 degree angle and trucks that are about 165 millimeters wide. I felt very comfortable running 165 millimeters trucks on this board, and I felt comfortable running a mix of proper downhill wheels like the K Rhymes wheel, Biggie Hogs, and even narrower freeride wheels like Easy Hogs and Powell Snakes. If you want to run purely freeride wheels that are really narrow, I recommend truck width of about 180 millimeters. If you want to run really wide downhill wheels, then I recommend a truck width of 150 millimeters. So what wheels should you run on this board? You can really run any wheel that you like, but I should point out with wheels that are going to be taller than 74 millimeters in size, you're likely going to get wheel bite, and you might want to pair them with a 1/8 inch riser underneath your truck to give you a bit more room. However, I will say if you're running taller wheels and you're doing downhill stuff, that don't really worry about wheel bite. Wheel bite is a myth above 25 miles per hour. You're never going to lean enough to get bite at that speed, so don't worry about it. So is the price of the Landyachtz Cheesegrater worth it? So for about $139, you can pick up this board. And to be honest, I'm a little bit shocked. I thought it would be more. The quality of this board is really good. It's really solid, and it's pretty high quality. I expect this board to go for about 150, maybe $160. But yeah, for 139, you're getting an excellent deal. And some other shops as well sell them for 130. I think I've seen prices for about 115 as well. So you're getting a steal with this deck. And yeah, the price is really good. Getting excellent quality with this board. Right, so what things did I not like about the Landyachtz Cheesegrater? So the first thing is going to be the stock grip tape that came with the board. Now the stock grip tape is very fine, and what this does, it doesn't really hold your leg in place very well. And when you're doing stand-up slides and you're doing hands-down slides, especially with really grippy wheels, you're going to want your grip tape to be a bit coarse so that it can keep you locked into your board. Yeah, the grip tape on this isn't very nice, and I had to replace it. But it was okay when I was doing like stand-up slides on things like easy hogs because they're really slidey and I don't really need as much grip from my grip tape to keep me on board. The next thing I didn't like was the shape, but after a while that has grown on me. And honestly, when you're riding, you're not really looking down at your board. So yeah. The next thing that I didn't like was the weight. And if you're like me and you like pushing up the hill, yeah, this makes you tired. And also, I talked to one of my friends, and he came off a board that had composites and stuff, so it was kind of lightweight. And he said you could really feel the weight in the slides. And I didn't feel this that much or at all. Like, I didn't feel it at all, but maybe something to keep in mind. But yeah, I don't really think the weight affects actual performance when riding down a hill, but other stuff like carrying it around or pushing up the hill, it will affect that. Finally, the last thing that I kind of didn't like was that once you find a mounting position that works for you, you're kind of left with a lot of dead space, depending on where that mounting position is, and you don't really use that. So, yeah, but that's more of a personal qualm. I'm a minimalist at heart, and yeah, once I find one wheelbase, I kind of just stick to it and I don't really use the rest. So, yeah. Right. So, what do you think is the Landyachtz Cheesegrater right for you? I really think that this is one of the most underrated freeride decks on the market right now. It's really high quality, and I think maybe the one thing that holds it back is its looks. So, if you've had everything I've said about the concave, about how it rides, about blah 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 blah, and you like it, absolutely go for this deck. Looks don't matter that much, and to be honest, the brake shape it is kind of growing on me, and I do kind of like it now. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks to everybody who subscribed so far. 1700 subscribers. That's pretty damn mad. And big thanks to all my patrons. Because of my patrons, I was able to buy this grip tape and grip this board and put out this review. So big thanks to you guys. Much love. I appreciate your support. And if you have anything to add, please comment below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, share it. Or if you didn't like it, comment why you didn't like it. If you like my face, comment that you like my face. Ho ho, hee hee, ho ho ha, ho ho ha, ho ho, hee 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 hee.